Hi and welcome to Excel Plus, tips, tricks, excitement and fun, as long as it's with Excel. Now, in the immortal words of Paul Stanley from Kiss, I really love you, baby. I love what you've got. Now, I'd like to think when he wrote those words, he was thinking about Excel and just how useful it is. But sadly, probably not. Especially as he wrote those words around 76, 77, and Excel wasn't released until the mid-80s, 1985. But I still think those words are quite prophetic and apply. So here's something you can love about Excel, and that's data tables. Now, they're a really useful way of improving the productivity of tables of data. So if we look at a typical set of data, and I'll go into what this analysis is in a moment. Yeah, typical rows, columns, various bits of data. Now this is not formatted in an Excel table, and to do so you would just highlight the Arrange and Insert table, and this now becomes an Excel data table. Now I'll flip to one that I've been using and go through some of the benefits. So, quick formatting. I've handily listed some of them down here so I don't forget them. Now, quick formatting, well, really, I'm not quite sure if that's that much of a benefit. So once something is formatted as a table, as long as you're within the table and click the Format Table option in the ribbon, you can go through some of these garish colour schemes. Let's stick with something simple. Easier data entry. Now this is quite good. Once you've got all your formulas input, the table is dynamic. So if you add an extra row, so this is the date, 31st of the 12th, 2015, it will copy the formatting and the formulas down for you, which is quite handy indeed. So if we add some data for 2015, that's 2.5 for the rate of inflation, 7,000 for the stock exchange, and 200,000 there. There you go, extra row of data, no problem whatsoever. Quick totals. Now it doesn't really apply to this table, but if you wanted to add a total, just hit the auto sum there, but it's not just the total. You can count, of course, standard deviation if you should want such a thing, and virtually any Excel function you want. That's quick and easy. Now, the always visible headers. This is quite useful. So if you're in the table, often you might freeze headers so you can see what they are. As you move down the table, it changes the tops of the columns to the labels you have at the top of your formatted table. That's quite handy. It took me ages to realise that was there. Now, dynamic charts. Now, I've got some charts based on this data. Now, if we remove the row we've just added, there we go, the charts. Well, they do go up to 2014, but it's basically, I've got the axes set up, so it's only doing every 2 years. We'll add 2015 again. Brilliant. I'll add the same data, 2.5, 7,000 and 200,000, and there we go. All of the charts updated. Absolutely superb. I don't have to bother about repointing them with the data. The charts update automatically. Yes, I mean, your spreadsheets can be faster if you have your data, especially large amounts of data, and you sort, say, on the correct columns. And things like VLOOKUPs, etc. will work better, and they work great with pivots. Now, I'll do that in a subsequent tutorial, but once you're in a table, there's even a summarize with pivot option. So these are great for handling your data, making it slightly dynamic. Rows and columns add automatically. And one thing you will have noticed, or you may have noticed when I was clicking into the cells, are the formulas. Now in this case, if you're summing along, or you're doing formulas along the same row within the table, it defaults to essentially the name of the column, and it treats them like labels. So if we go into the invest, you can get rid of it and just leave the at. It brings up, much like a named range, every single column within the table. Now if you were to alter a formula, get rid of that, it automatically changed every single formula in that column. So you only need to change one and it will update every single one. Now we'll just change that back. Now what this data table in fact was part of was relating to a discussion I had many years ago, and that was what generates the best return, the stock market or houses. So if you invested a similar amount in the stock market and houses and just left it there for a lengthy period, which would generate the greatest gain? And essentially I've taken the retail price index from the Office of National Statistics, so I can strip out price increases, inflation, sorry, the FTSE 100, which I've tracked back to 1975, and house prices, which I take from the nationwide. Oh, but get rid of that 2015 column, as that's just made up. And then essentially I strip out inflation and normalize the stock exchange and the house price at 100 for 1975, and then plot the change in that index. And I assume all dividends earned on your initial shares are reinvested and more shares are bought. And I've just assumed a 2.5% dividend yield. Now this, of course, I'm not an actuary, so this analysis is quite straightforward. And then I've just fed some graphs off it. So the real growth, top left, is the most interesting. And there you can see we started in 1975, there's our 100 quid. And there wasn't too great a difference until the start of the 90s, when the house prices hit quite a slump, and the stock market went absolutely bonkers. And there was the dot-com bubble bursting. But even then, even after that savage correction, shares have still really gone considerably ahead of house prices. Although if I'd actually started this analysis in 1999, I'd have a completely different result. So it just shows with the same data, pick the starting point you want, and you can paint a completely different picture. And this graph here, bottom left, it just shows the impact of dividend income. If we don't reinvest, then lo and behold, the gains aren't quite as good. And I just look at the actual growth. I don't bother removing inflation. Just a few interesting graphs, but the top left is the most interesting one, as that's inflation stripped out and dividend income included. So you can see, the stock market still does very well, although it hasn't performed that well from 2000 onwards, really, has it? It's been pretty up and down. So I'll include this file as a download. Really, it's the use of the table which is the most interesting, but you're welcome to have the analysis and actually pick it apart and tell me it's rubbish if you want. It was just a little something we were discussing at work and knocked up just to try and answer the question with real data rather than just guessing. Again, just shows the kind of fun you can have with Excel. So I'll move on to pivot tables, which really are the natural successor and the reason why it's good to get a grips with data tables, and then moving on to pivots, which is where they're really, really useful indeed. So any queries, questions, please feel free to email me. I'll answer them if I can, and if they're good ones, may use them for a subsequent tutorial. So you keep on enjoying Excel, and next time if you're doing a bit of Excel work late at night, put on a bit of classic Kiss. I often find those great tunes help the thought processes. So until next time, have a good one and keep on rocking with Excel.